Welcome into another episode of the Young Terps podcast. Ahmed Gafir and Mason Viner. Ahmed, Terps, pair of big games coming up, but let's start off with basketball. Villanova takes a similar loss to the two the Terps had.
Yeah, obviously it doesn't have the same allure that it did maybe a week or two ago, but Maryland will definitely look to rebound after disappointing weekend, but long week where the team's able to practice and rebound a little bit and get a chance to see a former Terp in Hakeem Hart on Friday night.
Yeah, Hakeem Hart not getting as much time as some thought he would at Villanova so far. Has not started a game, averaging somewhere around 17, almost 18 minutes per game, 4 points. Contributor, but not quite the role that I think he left Maryland for.
Yeah, and I think it's a little bit surprising if you're a Maryland fan looking at the impact that Hakeem Hartman kind of left on the roster really the last 2 years versus kind of what the status that he had in the transfer portal going to Villanova. Obviously, you have Justin Moore there who decided to come back. That's a big return for the Wildcats. TJ Bamba as well. So you expected Hakeem Hart to maybe be maybe that third piece to kind of complement those guys. So we'll see. Fourth game of the season this Friday, and a chance to play his former team. Will that kind of be the spark to kind of jolt him a little bit? We'll see. That remains to be seen, but definitely a surprise early on.
Yeah, definitely a team that's going to challenge Maryland, of course, on their home court, their true home court. Not going to call Wells Fargo their really a true home court for Villanova, but on campus, a small venue. It's going to be a tough place to play for Maryland, and ultimately Villanova, not quite the teams that Jay Wright put together in his run, but a super solid program. You already mentioned Justin Moore, one of the best players, I think, in the country, averaging 18 and a half points a game roughly at this point. Maryland definitely has to step it up on really all phases of the game, which is going to be a huge challenge for Willard.
Yeah, and I think kind of the really interesting thing is, when you look at Friday night, that the first loss against Davidson, obviously the 3-point shooting, Bobby Durkin, obviously that game winning three that was his fourth of the night. But their ability to kind of make Maryland pay from deep, I think when you look at obviously TJ Bamba, who's shooting over 46% from three. They have some 3-point shooting threats, and I think just kind of with Maryland, whether they're able to kind of lock in defensively, which is kind of what you expect Maryland to do under Kevin Willard, whether they're kind of able to kind of step it up a notch and kind of be able to guard on the perimeter a little bit better. That might be able to be the tail, but I think obviously a big part is really Maryland able to kind of find its groove, find its identity on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, and find its energy just on the court in general, whether it be from Kevin Willard, David Cox, Jameer Young. I mean, all these leaders and players in their last season of college basketball. This is, one of those games, and I'll say it, I'll talk more about it with the football game that Maryland has this weekend, but the same thing goes for the basketball program. This is why, you transfer to a school like Maryland. This is why you stick around. It's for games like this that you get, only so many opportunities of, especially against an opponent like a Villanova, who's been so successful as of late, just in the overall college basketball landscape. You would love to see Maryland, look more alive on the court is the word that I'll use, and really start to play to the level that everybody knows they're capable of, and just be active in the game, closing out on shooters, not making mental errors, moving the ball well, and playing to the standard that they set for themselves last year with the high energy impact.
Yeah, there we go with the standard, man. We gotta.
Hey, you know what? I was thinking about it as I said it. I was like, I gotta find another word. And then I was like, no, it really is. I guess they level set a new bar for themselves last year.
Yeah.
Turgeon era that they need to meet come Friday night.
Yeah, and I think that's completely valid. And I think a big part of that obviously is, when you kind of look at the makeup of this team, obviously, the three veterans, much has been made. And I think you kind of, especially with Jameer Young and Julian Reese, you kind of know what to expect out of those guys. And I think with Deshaun Harris-Smith, obviously, it was never really in question that he would kind of take over Don Carey's role at two. And obviously Jordan Geronimo is a guy who's kind of settling into a new roster. Jamie Kaiser Jr., another freshman. So you're kind of just waiting for the freshmen to kind of take that jump, kind of get settled in a little bit and find their groove. It feels like Deshaun Harris Smith at the rim this weekend against Davidson and against UAB a bit. He kind of struggled finishing through contact, and Jamie Kaiser, was able to knock down, I believe, 2 threes on the weekend. But again, you want him to as a guy that's a 3-point specialist and a freshman, on the defensive end of the floor. You want him to be able to kind of play up and live up to the task at hand. So I think this weekend, after a couple days of practice and this team to kind of get in a groove. Obviously, Kevin Willard hasn't really been shy about his disdain for having a midseason tournament this early in the season. But I think kind of for Maryland to kind of go through that rough stretch in the second and third game of the year, and see how the freshmen adjust. But I think this Friday we'll kind of see how impactful those two guys can be, and I think if those two can kind of leave their mark and kind of step up as expected at what they're doing, obviously with Jamie Kaiser from three and Deshaun Harris Smith being able to step up defensively as well, but just kind of finish at the rim, provide some offensive scoring threat. I think that's kind of when you'll be able to see the rest of the roster and the rest of the guys kind of settle in, figure out how to play well with each other, and maybe see a little bit more chemistry on the offensive court.
Yeah, well, the two things I'm going to, I guess, leave it with go hand in hand. Really the key for me looking at this team right now is ball movement through sets. And really, I think when you look at a basketball team that's in the spot that this unit as a whole looks like it is, they just lack chemistry on the court, as you said. In your points that you just made, I think ball movement through sets are something that's going to make everybody kind of feel good early in the game, especially if they can knock down a couple of shots. It almost feels like they need to have a string where they hit 3 out of 4 shots and 3 of them hopefully are threes, and they go down. Everybody starts to kind of feel like, okay, this can work. We're going to play together. We're moving the ball well. Those driving kick moves are working. If you go back and you watch the two games, there were so many opportunities, especially from mid-range in the three-point line, where ball movement did create what is considered in the modern college basketball era is a great shot. Wide open elbow threes, wide open corner threes for guys that you expect. Noah Batchelor, Jamie Kaiser, even a guy like a Jahari Long. He's not a 3-point shooter, but it's not an awful shot for him to take a wide open three. He's a guard in college basketball. Just seeing some of those shots go down, I think will just sort of lighten or brighten everyone's mood a little bit and really have the effect you would hope it can take and really propel the team forward. And you hope pull out a win this week. And look, there's some real winnable games coming down the line, and then it gets tough again. So you got to take those wins and those opportunities when you get them.
Yeah, and I think obviously you look on one end. I know we talked a little bit about it on the post game show, but when you just kind of think about Davidson and UAB potentially being bad losses for Maryland, you look at Friday. Obviously Villanova's coming off that UPenn loss, which is disappointing for them, but come March, you kind of expect that to be, quad one, quad two, type of potential win for either Maryland or Villanova. So I think for Maryland getting on the right side of that, I think is an obvious one. But then for me, I think another probably a big part in that offensive chemistry is Maryland's turnovers problems. I mean, they've forced 43 turnovers through 3 games, and they've given up 43 turnovers. And you kind of didn't really expect that too much, obviously, with Jameer Young coming back and Jahari Long, obviously. But I think kind of Maryland being able to kind of cut back on that and kind of improve the efficiency, I think will kind of translate to just better chemistry, better flow on the offensive end.
Yeah, so hopefully we see a much-needed road win. And look, I'm going to go out and say it will probably be a quad one if they can pull it off come March. So big opportunity for Maryland on the road in the Gavitt games against Villanova on Saturday. Huge opportunity for the Terps in CQ Stadium as they close out the home slate for 2023, and they welcome in none other than the toughest opponent on the schedule this year, the 10-0 Michigan Wolverines.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one, obviously. I think this is a lot of fans are kind of looking at this one, senior day, last game for Talia, with kind of everything going around Michigan, big noon kickoff coming to College Park. Media will have an opportunity to meet, Matt Leinart, Brady Quinn, Mark Ingram on Friday before the game as well. So just, big atmosphere for this weekend. But obviously you just kind of look at, Maryland, whether they're able to pull off that big win. And like you said, just doing so in the last game of the year. Maryland will look to defeat a top 5 team for the first time since 2004 when they beat fifth ranked Florida State. So big opportunity. Obviously, Deshaun Jones, Fanaje Gote, both those guys, 6-year seniors. It'll be their last game in College Park. So definitely will be a lot of emotions before the noon kickoff. But it's the final chance for Maryland to get that big win this season.
Yeah, and I was talking about it with some Maryland fans today. Is really it's a chance to right the ship of the season in my mind. And I know for many of you that are listening, you probably say, "What is this guy talking about right now?" But the goal was that many people laid out 8-4, 9-3 with a win against one of the big three in the conference. And look, that's still and you hear it in Loxley. Look, they're not competing for championships, but it would certainly be a step again in the right direction, a massive step in the right direction to pull a game off like this. I'm not saying they are going to win the game, talking about just the opportunity that's there. It's a huge opportunity for the program going into a game against Rutgers that's very winnable next week to check that box. This is a team that they felt like they could have won the game last year in the Big House. It was on the giant jumbotron when they were working out. They didn't hide at all from that game being what they felt like was going to fuel them forward. And this week, it's also something that everybody in the Michigan sideline is going to realize. Hey, this team came into our stadium and almost beat us last year. If you don't think that Jim Harbaugh and his staff are saying that to their players as they prepare for this game, that's got to be one of the topics on both sides of this going into it. So for Maryland, look, just all about embracing the opportunity, putting your best and last game for many of the players that the fans have seen now for 6 or 5 years. It's a chance to kind of get that one that got away during the freshman year of Fanaje Gote and Jayshon Jones. For last year for Leah, the Ohio State game and the Michigan game, they both felt like they got away. It's one last shot to really cement some of their legacies in College Park, and they've certainly had opportunities to do that they've whiffed on. But look, the last one is what a lot of people remember when they talk about legacy, and that has got to be what Loxley and Ryan Davis are telling their team as they prepare for this game.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you talk about chance to right the ship, I mean, I think every fan looked at I think everyone breathed a collective sigh of relief when he picked up that 6 win last weekend. But I mean, I'm not sure that I'm there where I'm going to say that I think Maryland will win. But hypothetically, if Maryland does what they need to do and they come out and they pull out this win, and then get a chance to pull out a 8th regular season win next week. The Illinois and the Nebraska game or the Northwestern game, excuse me. I mean, obviously those would just be bad games, but it would completely change the narrative of the season, especially handing Michigan the first loss, taking out a college football playoff team. Like I said, beating the first top 5 team in 19 years. This program hasn't really seen those type of results. So yeah, I think especially Taulia Tagovailoa, a lot of people kind of look at him and say he never won that big game, and like you said, that 2020 COVID win over Penn State definitely sticks out, and the missed opportunities. But again, definite big opportunity this weekend, but they will definitely have their work cut out for them.
Yeah, they certainly do. The number one scoring offense in the country, averaging 39 points per game, or the conference is what I meant to say, averaging 39 points per game. Total rushing offense up there in the national, or total offense up there in the national picture. One of the best, if not the best, two-headed running back combo will come to College Park. One of the best passing offenses, a Heisman candidate in J.J. McCarthy. I mentioned the duos of running back Donovan Edwards, who I think is one of the most underrated players in college football at the moment, and Blake Corum, who is just an absolute beast. 3 receivers to go on with that, which is the thing that people always said they were missing. That's certainly not the case with Roman Wilson and company. This team, it's fair to say, is about as stacked as they come, and that all goes with potentially, I'm going to go a top 3 offensive line. If not, it's definite case for the best offensive line in all of college football that goes with that.
Yeah, I mean the protection definitely starts right there, and there's a reason that Michigan has been able to sit in so many at the top in so many categories, and the protection, the offensive line has been the catalyst, not just even this year, really the last 3 years. But you mentioned Donovan Edwards, Blake Corum, but those guys are kind of going to be the engine that make them go. Obviously, J.J. McCarthy sits, I believe he's averaging 240, close to their yards, all-purpose yards per game. But then you look at the running backs again, Donovan Edwards, who's been able to kind of embrace himself himself as a good true receiving threat. I believe he's one of 4 players with over 20 catches going into this game. And then Blake Corum, you look at last year's game, there were a couple of those just missed tackles where he's able to bounce outside, just real slippery running back, and he does a good job making you pay for it. So obviously wrapping up, I think Maryland was able to do a little bit better of a job last week. Again, not too many chunk plays from Nebraska on the ground, but again, just kind of limiting what they're able to do there. And I think it again starts with um, limiting Blake Corum on the ground there. But the Wolverines definitely pose a little bit more of a challenge through the air than Nebraska. Obviously, like you said, with the 3 wide receivers, Roman Wilson accounting for half of their receiving touchdowns, 10 of their 20 so far this year. So it feels like it's kind of on like the defensive side of the ball where it feels like there's so many guys. It's not just one particular guy that you can just kind of completely lock in on. So Maryland's going to have to completely be dialed in. But I do think just making sure that you're bringing Corum down at that first point of contact, I think that is one of the first points of emphasis there.
Yeah, and a place that Maryland has struggled in. Would love to see, again, the 5-man front for the Terps to now make its third straight week appearance with Ty Johnson moving to the defensive end position, Jordan Phillips, and Trey Colbert on the inside, along with either Donnell Brown, Caleb Wheatland down on the line of scrimmage as well. That group has done fairly decent against the run early in games. Obviously, play action and quarterback contain have been issues against Drew Aller. And then last week, I mean, I don't even think there was really a comparison week to week. It's just such a strange gap game with a team that could not move the ball at all through the air. Obviously, it's another game where you would love to see Glenn Miller really take the nickel back role along with Gavin Gibson in there on passing downs. And then Bo Braid and Dante Trader both had a great game. Bo Braid forcing a big fumble. Dante Trader obviously has 2 interceptions. Those guys, again, hopefully the mojo just stays good because all of them have struggled, specifically in the secondary. They haven't gotten it done on the defensive side of the ball. They got it going last week. They really carried the team. Hopefully it carries over and you see sort of the effects of some good momentum in the building. But the task is equally as challenging for Leah and company on the other side of the ball. Ahmed, Michigan, stacked full of NFL defensive talent per usual.
Yeah, it's a loaded, I would say front 7, but I mean even the DBs are good. Obviously, Chris Jenkins, he's a guy that Maryland went really hard after. Keon Sabb is another guy that Maryland went hard after. He's been in the rotation. Cam Good, there's a blast from the past there from St. John's. Yep, he's playing for the Wolverines now. But those are just a couple of guys that are in the rotation. Obviously, Josiah Stewart, Mason Graham, Jalen Harrell. Combined for 17 TFLs on the year, 10 and a half sacks so far. Junior Colson leading with 52 tackles. And like we mentioned, Chris Jenkins, a future first-round talent there along the defensive line. So this is probably the second best defense in the Big Ten behind Penn State, in my opinion. But there's very little flaws. And I think kind of what you look at against Nebraska, where it comes down to really Maryland getting the ball outside and just minimizing, the margin for error is not big against a team like Michigan. So taking advantage of those chunk plays, those deep balls through the air, I think that's going to be the kind of the key to the game, and Birmingham being able to pick up positive yardage on the ground.
Yeah, I will say just being able to have any sort of a run game, not a repeat of what happened against Penn State, will elevate the chances of being competitive and ultimately winning the football game for Maryland. I like some of the things that were put in last week, even though Maryland didn't necessarily get the ball down the field much. Couple things that you really need to see from the Terps. One is finding a way to get Corey Dyches and Preston Howard really back involved in this offense. They get a ton of snaps between the two of them, but finding ways to get them touches vertical up the middle of the field would be a great thing to see. Corey Dyches, I mean, as a season, it feels like he's almost been invisible, but he's up there in total tight end receptions in the FBS. He's up there in touches and snaps per game. I mean, he's sort of like a silent, almost record-breaking season for a Maryland tight end in terms of receptions. If he can find a way to, if Brock Bowers wasn't Brock Bowers, Corey Dyches would be leading in a lot of categories when it comes to tight ends this year, which is amazing, just given how much the Maryland conglomerate has clamored for him to get the ball more, and he's missed a couple games. He's been banged up this year, but I would really like to see him get down the field and have some opportunities like we saw last year from him in the middle of the season when they were really taking deep shots towards him, getting him the ball in the middle of the field and letting him break tackles. And he's a really aggressive runner. So I'd love to see Dyches with the ball more. Another spot is, again, if they start to struggle getting the running backs the ball, bringing some of the swing pass action back. It's in the playbook. We've seen it towards Octavian Smith. We've seen it towards Roman Hemby, Colby McDonald. That is just a great way. I hate the term it's an extension of the run game, but getting the ball out wide and letting your players get one-on-one matchups is where Maryland has been successful. And that goes to my number one point is if a team is stacking up and they're sending 7, 8 guys towards the quarterback and putting everybody in press man, Caden Prather and Jay Jones just throw the ball 25 yards down the field. Inevitably, if Leah misses it short, you'll see flags thrown. If Prather or Jones beats their guy, there's a chance for a hold, pass interference, and of course for the big play, which is what you want to see. Prather has shown nonstop his ability this season to catch passes that we haven't had a receiver that can catch since Stephon Diggs and Deion Long were on the field. Give them those opportunities to win one-on-one matchups, make the safeties back off, make the inside linebackers play some zone defense. Don't constantly allow your quarterback to be facing pass rush problems in the game. Give them opportunities just to throw the ball deep, make some big plays, and make people think twice about blitzing everybody.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail right on the head. I was going to bring up Caden because I think he's a guy that, I think he flashed that catch radius last week with that amazing grab against Nebraska there. But I think he's a guy where, you need Maryland to kind of take shots downfield, and KP is definitely the number one guy. Ty Felton, he's another guy, Maryland announced that he recorded, I believe it's the fastest in-game speed at 22 miles an hour and change, the fastest since Loxley took over as head coach. So he's another guy that has kind of been able to prove that he has that burner, that top end speed that's really unmatched, that he's able to kind of make defenses pay downfield. As long as he's able to take care of that opportunity. And you mentioned Corey Dyches. Obviously, he's sitting third among tight ends in the country right now with 42 catches this season. But I think a big thing for me is obviously the offensive line, how they're going to hold up in protection. This is going to be the most talented front that they've seen since the Penn State front that we saw 2 weeks ago. And, Penn State had very little problem getting behind the backfield. I think it was 12 TFLs, 6 sacks there. And I think obviously part of that is the offensive line itself, but how Maryland's able to adjust with that second blocking tight, or that second tight end, that blocking tight end. I know Lockie talked about Preston Howard going against 44 from Ohio State back last month. And again, that's just Preston Howard just needing that time to kind of develop, to become that bona fide, reliable blocking tight end that Maryland's kind of been, trying to fill so far this year, but it feels like it's still a glaring hole. So I think this is a game where that development kind of looms large there. And then you mentioned just kind of Corey Dyches just kind of being a safe target there over the middle for Talia there. We'll talk about it briefly, but I kind of like him in the player props as well. So I would have to double down with you on that point.
Yeah, I think just finding a way to clear out the middle of the field is the key, whether it's through the short passing game, which is what we saw more of last week, or really through what I think it needs to be, which is the single. You just cannot allow a team to play press man coverage against your best players and never really test those opportunities. And look, when you throw those deep balls, when you try and have to create space because your offensive line just pound for pound can't match up with the guys on the other side of the line, you're going to throw away some 1st and 10 opportunities where you're just kind of throwing it up deep, and you got to trust your quarterback to do that, which is where Loxley has been very hesitant because, as he said after the Penn State game, Lee is going to drop his eyes towards that pass rush and not keep his head focused downfield.
Yeah.
But finding a way to free up the middle of the field, it just amplifies every single point that we could say keys to the game all day. But ultimately, it's not allowing the inside linebackers to sit in the A gap all day and either one of them rushes, both of them rush, or they both bounce back into that buzz under coverage that Maryland has struggled with since Josh Jackson was the quarterback, just trying to find the tight end in the middle of the field, linebackers sitting right under it, pass gets intercepted. There's a lot of those things that just start to stack up, and that is the weakness of Mike Loxley's offense. It was at Illinois, it was at Alabama, and it certainly has been at Maryland, but that's it for me in this game. If you want to compete, you got to hit deep balls. You got to make your opportunities count. We've seen that basically break a lot of opportunities in this time, just dropped deep balls and missed open guys down the field.
Yeah, and I think we talked about just how good this front seven is, and how the protection is going to fare, and it's not fair to put it all on Leah. I mean, Leah's only one part of that, but obviously just the guy that touches the ball the most naturally as the quarterback. Maryland's going to need him. I think a lot of people after that Indiana game said, is this Talia's best game in a Maryland uniform? And it's probably easily top three. But I think over the last 2 seasons, 3 seasons, yeah, it would probably be his best complete performance. But against Michigan, the Michigan team that this front seven, again, is dominant, and they sit right behind Maryland in interceptions in the Big Ten with 12 this year. So they can make Talia pay. And again, like we saw last week with Talia, I think it was that interception in the third quarter where he was rolling out, pass got tipped, deflected there, and right into the hands of the Nebraska defender there. So this is a defense that they've shown that they can force mistakes, they can force that pressure, and they'll capitalize on it. So I think winning the turnover margin, obviously, I mean, Maryland, I believe they're undefeated this year when they've won the turnover margin and winless when they've lost it. That will probably loom largest, and kind of being able to keep that composure for a 60-minute span is a necessity, obviously, to be able to pull out this win.
Yeah, two things that I really like in this game. One is the return of Kyle Long to the starting offensive line. Hopefully, we see him. He's been kind of battling, obviously, in the position game. That guard spot's been, I guess, the focus of Brian Braswell in terms of rotating guys there. I really like the size that he brings in the running game. You can see the improvement in the ability to run inside the interior offensive line when he's out there. Ahmed, you reported that he's out there in College Park on Tuesday with the first team, so hopefully that stays. And then you mentioned, the turnover margin, and this is a spot where, look, at this point with the quarterback that's this far into his career, you're not exactly sure what improves it. When he runs out of real estate on the sideline, it is not the worst thing just to throw the ball away. You don't really need to force it up and try and hit a guy that's sliding out of bounds. They're big momentum plays when you make them, but they're certainly drive killers and momentum killers when it turns into a turnover or almost turnover situation. It's everybody just not trying to do too much becomes a thought. When you talk about the same thing that I said can propel a team to win, with it being everyone's last game and last opportunity for this group to really make an impact, you also can't think that you're going to force something that's going to make that happen. And Leah does. And yeah, you are 100% right. It's not all the blame is not on him. This offensive line has really let him down throughout the season, and guys haven't caught passes they should have caught. And there's a lot of things that have snowballed this into really 2 midseason losses that probably shouldn't have happened, and some games where the team has vastly underperformed their talent level. But everybody just has to come out, and Loxley's been saying it and pushing it. It's the most common football term. Everybody's just got to do their job, play their role, and trust that they're going to be put in position by the coaches to win and compete in this game the way that they've been talking about since they lost it last year in the Big House.
Yeah, and like we said, this is Maryland's last chance to do it. Last chance with the veteran quarterback. The Maryland fans should kind of take a moment and kind of appreciate how long it's been since you've really seen a starting quarterback and close out his 4th year as a starter here in College Park. It's really just been since C.J. Brown. So definitely will be interesting to see kind of how this team is able to respond. They've shown in the past that they're capable of playing up to the competition. Obviously against Ohio State, like we've talked about before, they showed that they can hang, and it felt like it was just the Maryland's mistakes that kind of helped the game kind of unravel. So whether Maryland's kind of able to rebound, whether the Penn State game is kind of the outlier of the season in terms of blowouts, and whether Maryland's able to pull off that signature win remains to be seen.
Yeah, and we certainly will see it. And Vegas certainly has the Terps as a steep underdog in their final home game of the season. Ahmed, our betting segment, the Terps, 19-point underdog in this one, over under set at 50.5. How do you see it going?
Yeah, I think the under. I just don't think both teams are going to be able to score that much. But I'm going to go with Maryland plus 19 here, just for that reason. Just because I think both defenses are going to be able to kind of step up a little bit. And again, I'm still a little bit concerned about just how efficient Maryland can be against Michigan defense. I think, again, that's going to be most crucial. But, this is a very talented team. And, Penn State, that front seven kind of mirrors what Michigan's kind of able to do there, and whether Maryland's kind of able to keep Talia upright, whether they're able to keep that efficiency and able to capitalize downfield remains to be seen. But I do think Maryland will be able to do enough, remain competitive, and cover that 19-point spread.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. I think the Terps covered the 19, especially when it opened up at 20 and a half, 21, 22, depends on where you are looking now as a consensus down to the Terps, a 19-point favorite. I like Maryland with the 19 points. I think if last year was a tell of anything, Maryland loves when it's the last minute. They are so much, in my opinion, able to get more effort when it's the last chance, and that's good and bad when you look at it from a program perspective. This week, obviously, I think it's going to be good. I think Loxley's really going to be able to sell the moment, sell the opportunity to the players. I think they'll embrace that. And look, if anything of what's been said year over year that's different, which I've been reflecting on in this last week since they were finally able to get that sixth win, is look, the preparation's been in doubt in the past. Loxley has said that he's pretty much lost the team, his first team, that he was really struggling to get the attention to detail. This year, you've never heard him say that. This year, it's been, we feel like we're preparing Monday through Friday to win on Saturday, and it's just not happening. We are shooting ourselves in the foot constantly.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of, they got the win last week. They saw it go their way, and the commitment to working hard towards that goal should really return to the building and provide some much needed internal energy for this football team. I think they cover the spread. I don't think they win the game, but I think it's an inspiring performance. And I think if Maryland is going to compete in the game, the over has to be the play, because the Terps certainly are not going to pin Michigan down to much less than, I think, 27, 28 points. I think you're probably going to have to reach the 30s against one of the best defenses in the country to have a chance to winning this game, just because the Terps secondary has yet to really have a great game this season.
Yeah, that's valid. I mean, the consideration, Michigan allowing 7.5 yards, or excuse me, points per game. That's a tall task for Maryland. But again, we'll see. I think this Maryland defense will kind of be able to live up to the task a little bit. But again, I kind of feel like just that this game, just with the last emotion, or the emotions that come with last game for Talia, for these seniors, for Tarheeb Still, for Joshawn Jones, for Najee Gote, for a lot of these guys that have been here from really from the ground up. I just think that again, Maryland has shown that they can play up at times, and I think this is the perfect type of game for them to do that. So I expect them to do so beginning Saturday at noon.
Yeah, a couple player props. Ahmed already mentioned them. Talia, only a half touchdown is the number.
Yeah,
the over on that one, an obvious pick to me, even if it comes down to garbage time.
Yeah, I just felt too obvious. I felt like the people needed to be alerted. Talia over half a touchdown, minus 260. I mean, not super great odds, but feels pretty comfortable that Maryland's going to be able to do something over a 60-minute stretch, and especially last game, I like that. And we talked about Corey Dyches a lot. He's DraftKings has him at 34.5 receiving yards right now, minus 120. I like that one as well. And then Roman Wilson for Michigan, over 54.5 receiving yards there. A little bit worried about his big playability, and Maryland's. Obviously, Marvin Harrison, I think, is the clear more talented wide receiver compared to Roman Wilson. But Wilson has definitely been shown to be that big play threat. And Maryland has struggled at times with that through the air against the teams that have shown that the ability to consistently attack 20 yards downfield. So we'll see how Maryland's able to do it. But I like that over to hit.
Yeah, and two other ones I just have to throw out there. Whatever the Caden Prather yard number is, I like the over, and whatever the Jayshon Jones number is, I certainly like the over in his last game in College Park. I think you'll see Jayshon hopefully have one of his best games as a Terp, because he's certainly somebody that it's shown in some negative ways, but certainly has played with the passion that you would hope that every player that comes through the program has. His career is one that it is worth reflecting on if you've watched this team and where it was when his freshman year, where it started to where it is now. The growth is just evident over his time in College Park.
Yeah, I mean, Joshawn Jones leaving makes me feel old. Like, I still vividly remember covering him out of high school, and Coach Beatty on him very hard, and When you think about that, it feels like a lifetime ago, but yeah, definitely a guy that's given it his all. Definitely interested to see how he does, but believe a lot of those. I know Ty Felton. I know his over under was 36.5, and I believe Deshaun Jones just 31.5. Don't hold me to that, but a lot of the receivers were for the Maryland receivers were in the 30s. So if there's someone that you like, the yardage is a little bit attractive right now. But I think Dyches and, like you said, Deshaun Jones. I think those two are sensible plays there.
Yeah, and we will see what the result is on the field on Saturday. Fox Big Noon Kickoff also makes its first appearance in College Park. Maryland finally getting a pregame show, one of the big pregame shows for a game that is off on was it La Plata Beach on campus. So it's sort of out of the way if you're a Lot Z tailgater, but definitely something worth checking out, and definitely something that Maryland's going to want to have a good showing too if they want to get more of that stuff on campus. Uh, Big Noon Kickoff game actually will kick. I believe it's at like 12:14. The game actually kicks
Yeah.
Saturday from CQ Stadium. Maryland wraps it up with Michigan. Ahmed, anything else to add?
No, fans are looking to get there on Saturday. I believe the show starts at 10 a.m. So I believe for first 500 fans get some Fox courtesy gifts. So definitely show up. Like we said, this will be the second time this season they got the Ohio State game as well, but that was obviously in Columbus. So like we said, fans are always looking for these types of environments, and think a chance for these guys to kind of show up and semi prime time. It's a great chance to close out the home slate.
Yeah, make sure to like this podcast where you get it. Subscribe to us where you can. For Ahmed Gafir, I'm Mason Viner, and as always, thanks for watching and thanks for listening.